Hey folks, welcome to another episode of 5 to 15 with Musickers. I'm your host Jason DeCristofaro, and I'm here with my friend Mark Scearce. Mark, thank you so much for being here.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So before this we were talking about two aspects of the music industry, because you do a lot of things. You compose, you sing, you play different instruments, but we're here today to talk about two things you do that I think people don't often think about as viable careers in the music industry, and they've been very successful for you. One of them is live sound engineering. You do all kinds of sound, obviously, but you really do a great job. We've worked together with live sound engineering. And then also music publishing administration. So I guess let's kind of dive into those. Both of those things you do fall under your LLC. Can you tell us a little bit about Red Mill and what you all do?
So Red Mill is my company that I started in North Carolina. I used to have a different company when I lived in California. But basically it's just an LLC. It's an umbrella that I can bill every client I have in order to get paid, and then work my taxes that way, rather than having 1099s as an individual or whatnot. It just funnels all through my business.
It makes, when tax season rolls around, it makes things a lot easier.
It makes it a little easier, yes. Yeah. And it saves you some money on taxes, which is always good.
Absolutely. Well, so let's talk first about what you do as a live sound engineer, because that's the work I'm most familiar with. How did you get into that world, and what are some of the things that you did to train yourself to get to the level where you're now touring nationally and working with a lot of different projects?
Sure. So I didn't plan on going into live sound. I was a musician in my early 20s, late teens, trying to make a go of it in the music industry in a band and whatnot. I stopped doing that when I was 25, and I went back to school for music, for composition, and had the intention of going into post-production, audio post-production, specifically mixing and sound designing commercials in Chicago, because that was a huge industry in Chicago.
This was in Chicago?
This was in Chicago. That's where I went to college. So during the process of interning, I met an engineer who was a post-engineer doing sound design and mix for commercials, who was in a cover band. Oh. And he needed someone to come mix his cover band. And I was an intern at the time, and I said, sure, absolutely, kind of do anything and everything at that point as an intern. So I started doing that on a fairly consistent basis. And then I got a job at a studio as a composer, writing music for ads, for commercials. One of the other engineers at that business referred me to a theater company in Chicago that ran a Tony Award-winning play called The $1 Million Quartet. And he referred me as a live sound engineer, because I was at that time still pretty low on the totem pole, not making a lot of money as a jingle writer, so I still needed to supplement my income. So I took a job doing live sound for this play. I really didn't have any idea what I was doing, but
because this was your first time, it sounds like, doing live
essentially, sound. I did do some, I grew up playing in bands and whatnot, so we were running our own sound for rehearsals and whatnot. And I did work at my dad's church for a little bit as a late teen, early 20s.
Sure.
With their praise and worship band. Nothing crazy though.
This was the first high profile.
This was the first time I ever really got paid to do it.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly. And so I did that for a couple of years, both the cover band and the play. The play was a massive success in Chicago. They had a residency at the Apollo Theater that ran for a long time, multiple years.
Wow.
And I mixed the plays, the shows, it was like a hybrid show. There was a band. It was the $1 Million Quartet. It was Elvis and all these other guys. It was kind of a story based on a story, but anyway, I would mix the actual plays, and then I would also travel with the band, because the band would do promo gigs at the TV station, at the Cook County Board of Elections, or whatever, all these kind of private parties things. So I would travel around with them and do the
You were part of the band.
I was pretty much part of the band.
Yeah.
I did that until I moved to LA. When I moved to LA to continue to do the jingle writing, I stopped doing live sound, mainly because I was so inundated with work as a writer. I was in LA for about 6 years, and then moved here to Asheville. And when I moved here, I wanted to get back into live sound because I really enjoy it. I really enjoy being out working with musicians, the live show. There's something about it that's really cool.
So just real quick, because there was a gap there when you were in LA.
About a 6-year gap where I only did composing and post audio, and I didn't do any live sound.
Well, so one thing I'm curious about, because technology's rapidly changing. I mean, something you buy right now is already out of date 5 minutes after you bought it.
Yes.
In that 6-year gap, did you notice any changes in the tech aspect or the tech side? Yeah,
Big time. So everything in Chicago that I was working on was analog gear. When I got here to Asheville and started working, everything had gone to a digital. And I really lucked out that I had a couple of pretty good mentors here. A guy named Johnny who worked at the Mothlight he just really helped me.
Johnny's great.
Yeah, he really helped me learn the digital gear. Was very patient, and I mean, once you know the ins and outs of signal processing, the digital boards are doing the exact same thing. Not to go too techy, but
you did some of this. You were already familiar with working with digital systems and hardware from your work as a jingle writer.
Right.
So it wasn't that
far of a leap. It applied. It was not that far of a leap. And I just, slowly. The best way to learn is to just do it.
Yeah.
And as scary as it might be sometimes, you're going to learn more mixing one show on your own when you're having to trip over things and mess things up than looking over somebody's shoulder for 20 shows. You're just, when you put your hands on the gear, it really sets in.
It's an art form. There's a craftsmanship to it. And if you're not in there getting your hands dirty, so to speak, you're not going to learn.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I started freelancing here in Asheville in 2017 around at different clubs. In 2019, so I did that for a couple of years. 2019, I took the production manager job at the ISIS Music Hall.
That's right.
And I did that for about 4 years.
Yeah.
And that was massive for my learning. One, because of all the shows I was mixing. I was the primary engineer, so I was 4 or 5 nights a week there mixing all kinds of different bands, bluegrass, big bands, rock bands. I mean, we had a harp ensemble one time. I mean, all kinds of really fun, hard stuff to mix. And that just being able to do that on the daily really sent my skill level way higher.
Right.
They closed in
last year,
January of 2023.
Yeah.
And since then, I've just been working around at a lot of the clubs. One World, obviously, Dinah Wortham. I'm doing the Wizard of Oz starting tomorrow.
Oh, nice.
For a 5-day run. So
before we shift gears and talk about music publishing administrative work, so I want to get into that aspect of your company as well. For folks who are looking to maybe get into the live sound world, what advice would you give them? Because I think what's interesting about your background, you're formally trained in a lot of areas, but it sounds like this was more of a kind of hands-on experiential apprenticeship in a way, because you also were studying people. What advice would you give to people, based on your experience, who want to get into this?
If you want to get into, and I think this applies for just about every part of the music industry, you have to, and I was just told this by a mentor who really mentored me a lot in Chicago. You have to be willing to work for free longer than anyone else. Because what happens is when you stop interning, even if you're working a 40-hour-a-week job to pay your bills, take 16 hours of extra, a part-time job, and intern. Because it just kind of gets you in a queue, so to speak, of jobs.
People know you.
People know you. You're in the mix, and when you stop interning, you're kind of out of the mix and you're out of the queue. And there's going to be someone else that's right there. It's how I got the job as a jingle writer. I interned at 3 different studios for a year and a half for free. I worked 16 hours a week for free for a year and a half, in addition to my 40-hour-a-week job.
It's an investment, though, essentially.
A massive investment. And, I took it to heart when Michael, my mentor in Chicago, said, if you do this, you will get a job.
Yeah.
It might take you 2 years, but you will land a job. It's going to be the lowest job on the totem pole, but no person, in charge of a business, whether it's live sound or publishing or audio composition, whatever, they're not going to just hire someone into a high position that has no experience.
Right.
And gaining experience is the most important thing.
That's just good life advice.
It's the most important thing to have experience.
Absolutely.
You can have all the credentials in the world from an education standpoint, but you have to get out there and just be in the mix.
I found that to be very true as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
We're almost out of time, but just real quick, I want to shift gears to the other work you do with Red Mill, your LLC, which is music publishing administration. So
Sure.
it just kind of elevator pitch real quick. Tell us what that is and what that looks like.
So specifically it's basically the common misconception with writers and composers and musicians too is that you register with ASCAP, you register a work, and they will go find you your money and give it to you. And that's not the case.
That is not
what
the
you have
case.
to do is tell them exactly where the money is through an administrative process, and then they will pay you. And sometimes, depending on the PRO, there's 3 in the U.S., ASCAP, CSEC, and BMI.
They're all on the same street in Nashville.
They are all on the same street, yes. Depending on which PRO it is, it can be a fairly cumbersome administrative process. So,
real quick for our viewers, what is a PRO? What does that stand for?
Performance Rights Organization.
Thank you.
Yeah. So they pay, or maybe it's performance royalty. I don't know. PR.
Look it up, y'all.
The PRO. So what I do, and I kind of fell into this also through just working in the industry and as a jingle writer because I wanted my own royalties. So I became pretty adept at going and finding my royalties. And basically, my composer friends said, "You do a good job of this. Could you do it for us?" And that's just grown into a fairly significant piece of my income.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So what does that process look like from the initial stage? If someone's written a composition and they want to get it out there to a wider market, and then you come into the picture.
Yeah.
So can you walk us, obviously it's different for everybody, but just sort of a general reductionist overview.
Sure. So for me, 9 times out of 10, a composer or one of my publishers will notify me that one of their works has been used in an advertisement or on the web or in a podcast or whatnot. And then I will go through the process of registering that work with the correct PRO, and then submitting the claims to the PRO via their either online portal or BMI is still on Excel sheets and all kinds of. And then once they are paid for that claim, then I go through and itemize their statements to tell them exactly how much they made that quarter on which jobs because a lot of my composers will have multiple things on the air at a time.
Sure.
And it just it saves them a lot of headache of dealing with that.
So you're kind of a PI in a way of sorts.
Essentially, yes, because it can be very hard to find the usage and then notify ASCAP. When in doubt, ASCAP. That's if you don't know who to affiliate with because you have a choice, of the 3, ASCAP is the least evil of them all.
That's a good way to put it.
There's a great book, and I don't know it off the top of my head, but it's by a man named Randall Wixson, who was a publishing administrator for some of the biggest catalogs out there. Tom Petty, Missy Elliott.
Wow.
He administrates their catalogs, and he wrote a book. And I wish I knew, but
Randall Wixson.
Randall Wixson's, the 101 of music publishing. It's a very easy read.
Nice.
But it really demystifies the world of music publishing because it is very complex and a lot of people don't understand how it works.
But it sounds like, and for you, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like this is something that, similar to what you did with the sound, you were doing this for a personal reason, and then it sort of blossomed and developed into this great career for you.
Yeah.
Similar to what I was asking about live sound, in addition to reading that book you just mentioned, what other steps should someone take if they're interested in getting into this world?
Into music publishing.
The music publishing administration.
Yeah. I would read about publishing, and if you're an artist, I would start with your own catalog, and I would really just be as buttoned up as possible from an administrative standpoint, and then go from there. Because if you're a writer, and or a publisher, or label, or whatever, these copyrights, they are your most valuable asset. If you were a real estate investor, they would be your homes or buildings. These copyrights
It's the actual assets.
Yes,
right?
they are
Yeah.
very important. Whether they're making you money right now or not, they still require the same kind of TLC from an administrative standpoint to make sure that the copyrights are registered and tracked appropriately.
Awesome.
So I'd start there, and then get on message boards. ASCAP and CSAC BMI, they all have conferences in LA and New York, Nashville. I've been to a lot of them. You can meet people, and heck, go intern at Universal Music Publishing or something like that.
There you go.
Just get your feet wet.
There you go. Mark, thank you so much.
Thanks, Jason.
Really appreciate it.
man. Yeah.
Before we go, can you tell us where to learn more about your business, Red Mill Music?
Sure, yeah, you could go to our website. It's redmill.tv.
Easy enough. Mark, thanks so much.
Thanks.
Awesome. Have a great day, y'all.